Reddit stories. Vanishing Hall. All the doors and windows in my university building have disappeared. We're trapped here. Not sure why I'm bothering to type this all out. I guess I'm hoping that it'll help me make sense of things, that it may reveal details I hadn't noticed before, but I doubt it. I'm really starting to lose it, and so is everybody else. I'll start near the beginning. I got to the university at around 10 this morning. I had an exam for intermediate philosophy, an elective course. Just figured I'd get it out of the way during the summer. I don't remember seeing or hearing anything weird when I first walked into the building. Then again, I wasn't really paying attention. My eyes were glued to my notes, an attempt at some last-second cramming. Although I distinctly recall first entering the building through a door that I'd gone through many times before. The weird shit started with the exam itself. The questions on the first page seemed relevant enough to the material we'd been taught in class. But then I turned the paper over and couldn't understand what I was looking at. It was a diagram of some bizarre, complex shape. Could have been a machine of sorts. The part that scared me was that it seemed vaguely familiar. Not enough for me to be able to place where exactly I'd seen it before, but enough to evoke this distant recognition. And it made my skin crawl. Whatever the memory was, it had most certainly been an unpleasant one. There was no question below it. Actually, the rest of the page was completely blank. I raised my hand while continuing to stare at the diagram, thinking that maybe they'd given me a misprinted copy. When nobody came over to me, I looked around the room, seeing that there wasn't actually a proctor or supervisor present at all. Just a bunch of confused-looking students. Thinking back, I was sure that I'd seen a person standing at the front of the room when I'd first entered. The same person who told us we could begin writing. But it hadn't been the professor. It hadn't been anybody I'd ever seen before. I just hadn't questioned it at the time. None of us really knew what to do. Eventually, somebody got up, left the room, and then a few more followed. But most of us stayed seated. I guess we were still under the assumption that if we left, we'd be in trouble. The product of years and years of academic conditioning. After a few minutes, one of the students came back. His eyes were wide. He told that there was something weird going on, that the doors at the main entrance were now missing. It was a difficult thing to believe, but the guy had said it with such fear and sincerity that it compelled us to stand up and leave the room in order to confirm it. And he happened to be right. Where the doors should have been was just a blank, solid wall. Somebody suggested that it could have been construction. Everybody else argued that was impossible. We were in the lecture hall for no more than 20 minutes. What kind of construction starts and ends so suddenly? Of course, the next step was to go and check the other exits, find out whether or not we'd actually been trapped here. I knew the layout of the building fairly well. Not like the back of my hand, but I'd been here enough. It was reasonably large, 3 stories tall, probably a basement as well. I knew that there were 4 different exits, though it wouldn't have surprised me if there were more. After scouring every inch of the first floor, I could feel my heart dropping down into my stomach. Every exit that I'd clearly remembered existing before was gone, all replaced by a blank wall. Afterwards, I walked back to the main foyer, where most everybody else had gathered, all of them with this stunned look on their faces. Somebody brought up the fact that all the windows were missing as well. We all looked at her. Then we looked around. She was right. It was something we hadn't noticed at first, because the shock of the missing doors had overridden it. They were all gone, even the large glass panes on the roof. People were shaking their heads, their expressions a mix of confusion and deep distress. Some paced around, muttering to themselves. A few of them were cursing out loud. I observed the group. There were maybe around 30 of us. I only recognized a few faces, but that made sense given that I had barely shown up to any lectures. And I only knew one of their names, Rachel. She was standing separate from everybody else, looking intently at her phone. I'd sat beside her during the first class of the semester, where where they'd forced us to participate in a series of icebreakers. We'd exchanged numbers then, but neither of us had reached out afterwards. She noticed me and offered a tight smile. She walked over, asked if I had any cell reception. I checked and saw that I didn't, which wasn't normal. Not that I'd ever had good reception in this building, but there had always been at least 1 or 2 bars. Now I had absolutely nothing, as if I were out in the middle of the woods or something. She then asked me if I had internet access. I could see that I was still connected to the university Wi-Fi, though everything seemed to be loading at a snail's pace. She said she was experiencing something similar. She'd tried sending out some emails to the administration asking what the hell was going on, but they hadn't delivered. I have a friend, James, who was also supposed to be on campus that day to write a different exam. I tried calling him on Instagram, but the connection was too poor for it to go through. Then I tried sending him a message, asking him to walk over the building, tell me what he saw from the outside. The message took a painfully long time to get through, but eventually it did. While we waited for a response, Rachel brought up the fact that there was a bridge on the 2nd floor connecting this building to the earth sciences, with nothing better to do. We went up the stairs in order to check it out, but we weren't the first ones there. A group of 3 was already standing in front of it. They looked like they'd just seen a ghost. The blood drained from their faces. When we rounded the corner, we understood why. The bridge was there, but it was dark. Not dark as in the lights weren't working. I mean, there was just nothing there. Beyond it, a complete absence of everything. An outright void. We couldn't even see a few inches into it before the light was completely smothered. It wasn't even gradual. It just stopped. Staring at it was uncanny. I began to wonder if maybe it was actually just a black wall. I grabbed an empty water bottle out of my backpack, preparing to throw it in when one of the other guys told me not to bother. We've already tried that, he said. It's not solid. Not a wall. Rachel asked him if anybody's tried going in there. He shook his head, told her, fuck no. But that she could be their guest. She stared at it for a long while, and it almost looked like she was considering it. But she didn't move. Soon a few more people came up, and we caught them up to speed. By now, there were about 10 of us just standing in front of it, all waiting for somebody else to go in. A silent tension hung in the air, as if this were some kind of bizarre trap. Eventually, somebody volunteered to check it out. A guy I didn't recognize at all, tall, muscular, buzzcut, a tattoo of a chainsaw on his arm, said his name was Arnold. He approached the darkness carefully and stopped a few feet in front of it, and then he just stared ahead. We asked him what he saw. He said nothing at all. He tried using his phone flashlight, but it couldn't pierce even an inch of the gloom. It was clear that he didn't want to go in, but that he'd nevertheless committed himself to it. Finally, he moved. He was in there for about 5 seconds before he came sprinting back out, and I mean sprinting like hell. All the way downstairs. Without sparing a moment to stop and explain what had happened, we looked into the dark, expecting something to come running out after him. But that didn't happen. Nothing moved and nothing made a noise. We went back down to the 1st floor and found Arnold hauling chairs from the cafeteria into the foyer. Somebody ran up to stop him, but he pushed them away, told them to fuck off. He began launching chairs at the drywall, tossing multiple in rapid succession. Then he picked one up and began using it like a blunt tool and smashing away. He'd become absolutely feral. Before long, he'd excavated a human-sized hole. We ran up to him, tried to calm him down. He just went harder. Eventually his body gave up, and he was forced to rest. And that's when he finally told us what happened in the bridge. There were people up there, he said in between long, labored breaths. We glanced at each other, and then asked him to explain. He took another deep breath, then told us that almost immediately after he'd walked in, he ran into something that was blocking the way. But it wasn't a wall or a random object. It was a person. A group of people, he realized, all standing perfectly still, in the dark. He said he knew they were people because he could feel their skin. But now that he was thinking about it, he wasn't sure they were actually people at all, because the skin was cold and clammy. The texture was strange. He said he could hear them breathing, but the exhales were too quick, as if they were panting. He said that their breath smelled like rotting gasoline, whatever that was supposed to be. He said that they were whispering terrible things to him, things about him that they shouldn't have known. Once he'd recovered enough energy, he was smashing the wall again, and we could do nothing but stand in silence as we watched him. I didn't want to believe any of what he just said, but his fears seemed real. Something had definitely happened to him up there soon. A few others picked up chairs and joined him, which led to more. And then Rachel and I had chairs in our hands as well. We spent about an hour smashing away until we realized something wasn't right, because we should have been outside by now. But the wall just kept going. Just endless drywall. We measured the distance between where we were now and where the wall started, nearly 10 feet. But maybe our sense of distance was just distorted, so we kept going for another hour. 18 feet now, and it was still the same story. As if they'd built an entirely new wall in under 20 minutes, one that was inexplicably thick. A civil engineering major pointed out that the wall itself was impossible, that it wasn't structurally feasible because there was no metal frame, that there weren't even any pipes or insulation, that nobody would have signed off on this, especially not for a university building. I didn't know what to think, but this seemed to be going nowhere, so I put my chair down, walked over to the cafeteria, and sat down in front of an empty coffee shop. It looked like it was still open. There was a half-filled pot of coffee in the back, pastries and sandwiches displayed in the glass, all the lights still on. It was just devoid of any staff. Then I realized that the only people in the entire building seemed to be the people who'd been writing the exam. It was a fact that bothered me so much I had to force myself not to dwell on it. I was tired and starving, so I went behind the counter and poured myself some coffee, grabbed one of the sandwiches. A bit later, I was joined by Rachel and a few others. Others have gone off in different directions, likely still in the search for another exit. Another group continues trying to break through the wall. Every now and then, they'll walk out of the hole with their shirts drenched in sweat, holding broken chairs. They'll come over and grab more before going back in. Their expressions are trance-like. I can see that some of their hands are bleeding as I was writing this. I got a text back from James. He said that he went to the building and saw it surrounded by cops and police tape. Said that he tried getting up close but was stopped and told it was a no-go zone, though they'd refused to give him an explanation. Said he saw all the entrances covered by what looked like large, white tents, each one guarded by officers wearing body armor and holding rifles. I'd been planning on asking him to contact the police. I was hoping that might help, but now I really don't know what to do.